Hi, everyone. This is Kamran Pasha, and I'm delighted to come back on to Midnight's Edge here. I've been away for a while, but I wanted to come back on, talk a little bit about some of the developments at Warner Brothers that I know there's been a big conversation about in the community. I regrettably wasn't able to join the live stream that was done a few days ago with my friends here at Midnight's Edge and great people like Strip Doctor who talked about some of the things that are happening. So I wanted to share my perspectives because I have a little bit of personal experience with regard to some of these events. So as some of you may have heard, Warner Brothers had a very well-regarded program called the Warner Brothers Television Workshop, which is, I think, almost 40 years old. And its primary purpose was to seek out and find minority writers and directors who hadn't been given a lot of opportunities, didn't have access to what I like to call the club, the powerful structure of Hollywood. And open doors for them, and also to train them to be better writers and better directors. And I'm a graduate of that program. I went through the Fresh Voices arm of that program in 2011, and so I got into it. Coming in, I was a minority, obviously Pakistani guy, Muslim guy, not a lot of us here in Hollywood. And I applied for the program. I got in, and that was a big deal because the program is very hard to get into at Warner Brothers. And that's the first thing I wanted to talk about, which is that, some people, whenever they hear about any of these kind of quote unquote affirmative action programs, the initial reaction is, here's just a quota system where underqualified people are being given opportunities that they're not ready for. Certainly the kind of thing that Malcolm X, who was a big hero of mine, would have critiqued, who's very much an opponent of quota systems and putting people in situations where essentially they would be tokens. And so that's not what this program was, certainly when I experienced it. It was something that was very hard to get into. There's only about 8 people or so get in a year. You're usually rejected. You have to reapply, and you had to have really substantial work that got you in there, because once in the program, you would actually have access to the highest level of Warner Brothers television executives. We're talking people that essentially ran the studio and ran the network, and that's not something that they wanted to give to any Joe Blow coming off the street, who said, well, I'm a person of color or BIPOC or whatever the current term is, and I need access, and that wasn't how it worked. And so I was very honored to get into the program. I then went through a very grueling 1-year process where I came up with an idea, a pitch for a television pilot. And that 1 year was working in this program with other successful writers. Some of them I would end up working with later professionally. Albert Kamen, Nikita, and others rose up through that program. And we were all sitting there in a seminar with these Warner executives. And we went through the entire process of coming up with our concept for our pilot, developing the structure of the story, outline all that, eventually to script, and then they would all get torn apart. I mean, it was a really aggressive program in forcing you to up your game. And I remember when I was so proud that I handed in my pilot to that I thought was the best thing I had written, and they just ripped it apart. And I felt completely humiliated. And then they said, you got to start over. It's not good enough. And I did. And the end result was, after a full year, I had a pilot called Enigma, which is still a writing sample I still use today. And it's something that gets me work. It ended up becoming one of my best scripts. It's essentially a TV pilot for an X-Files type show, but set in the world of the Illuminati and, conspiracies, and essentially have government agents who discover that there really are shadowy conspiracies behind world events. They're not UFOs or aliens, but they're actually people with sinister occult agendas behind things. And that pilot ended up pushing my career forward, got me a lot of new work. But most importantly, Warner's actually aggressively put it out there. They actually tried to sell the pilot. And the program had such resources that I was introduced to the marketing people at Warner Brothers. We sat down, they went through the script, they created an entire marketing video. It was quite expensive to make, to sell it, and with computer graphics and all this stuff, essentially creating a miniature version of the show. And the fun way they put it out there was they actually sent the script to networks in the form of a laptop. They actually created a laptop. You would open the laptop. It wasn't a real laptop, but what it was that you'd open the laptop and the screen would play the video that they had created, and out of the keyboard would pop out the actual physical script. I mean, that was a very expensive thing, and they sent out to dozens of networks. A lot of people were like, oh, it's a great script, but not going to do it, right? And so it didn't sell at that moment. But the incredible effort Warner Brothers put in to pushing that forward, it stunned me and it advanced my career, because it certainly changed the way I was perceived in this town, coming out of that program and getting that kind of marketing push for one of my pilots from Warner Brothers. So that's what that program was capable of doing. Now, I've heard, and I know my friend Script Doctor has said that he's heard that in the last several years, the program changed from being the sort of meritocracy that I experienced and becoming more of a political indoctrination kind of thing. That wouldn't surprise me. The world we've been in since 2016, 2017 has been very much like that in Hollywood. We've talked about that a lot on Midnight's Edge. And so it should not shock us. And, I think the leadership of Ms. Ann Sarnoff and the Warner Brothers certainly pushed it in a very political agenda of Warner Brothers. It changed in many ways the nature of that studio where I have worked quite a bit. I worked on that, for the Nikita and other shows. I still get residual checks from Warner Brothers Television, right? And so I've been employed there several times, and it was a good studio. So that's a studio that then went through a lot of chaos in the last several years, partly because there's perhaps primarily because there's political ideology that was disconnecting from the customer base. And so now we've had the situation where David Zaslav from Discovery has purchased Warner Brothers, and in the last several months, he's very aggressively done what he should do as an executive, which is cost cutting, trimming out the fat, going through the programs and saying what's worth saving, what's not. Regrettably, they decided to cut. At least early this week, decided to cut the Warner Brothers Television Workshop as something they decided, well, it's not, bottom line, it's not making us a lot of money. Now, setting aside the comments about whether that workshop has become something that perhaps it wasn't before, the very idea of the workshop and the way that I experienced it was something that is of economic value to Warner Brothers and the industry. The meritocratic system that I experienced, the one that pushed writers to be better, that one that said to minority writers, that script's not good enough. You won't be able to compete with that script. Go back and fix it. If you want to compete, that's the kind of program we want for anyone, and especially for people that aren't getting access at a real level. One of the conversations that we have is, and I've had this conversation this week with a fellow screenwriter who was the opinion that all these diversity programs are great things. Of course, this person is a Caucasian screenwriter and had these nice opinions. And I said, look, a lot of these diversity programs, unfortunately, they're there for lookism. Look, we have a minority here. Look how we're helping this poor minority. And they're not advancing them. They're not training them. And that wasn't the Warner Brothers program as I experienced it. It was very much a get up and give us your A game. And if you don't have your A game, you need to get your A game. And that's the kind of kick in the butt everyone needs. And it certainly at the time that I was there was giving access to people that weren't getting meetings at that level, but had talent, but nobody was noticing them. Right. And I think most of us of our range of political views here would think something like that is of value in any system where someone who has talent, who's not being noticed, is being given both training to be better and given access that's worthy of their talent that they didn't have before. I think that's good economically for everyone. It opens up opportunities for everyone to make money. Right. And so when I heard that Warner Brothers decided to cut that program, and it caused shockwaves throughout the industry, because it was such an established program for 40 years and has produced some very successful writers and directors from there who are very, making a lot of money for the system. It hurt me personally because I was advanced by it, and it aided my life in a way that was very real, and it forced me to be better. And it made me think how many other people are not going to be given that chance. So when that came out, there was a huge uproar. And within 24 hours, Warner Brothers came out and said, no, you're right. We're not going to discontinue this, but we're going to move it on the accounting ledger from the main studio into the DEI, the Diversity Equity Initiative part. Now, my view as a minority is that as I just said a bit earlier to my Caucasian screenwriter friend, most of these DEI initiatives in corporations in general, in Hollywood in particular, the studios, are places that don't necessarily push minorities to be their best and force them to really compete in a world where they are the minority, and it's okay. And in all societies, there's a majority culture and a minority culture. It's true in Pakistan, where I was born, right? Christians and Hindus are minorities there, but they're still there. When I worked in Pakistan, I went to visit Pakistan. I met the head of one of Pakistan's biggest TV studios, and he was a Hindu who had been, his family lived in what was Pakistan, British colonial India, in the part that would become, and they were Hindu and they're minority. And look, he's successful. He's running a major TV studio as a Hindu in Muslim Pakistan, right? So there are minorities in every culture, and you have to rise up and establish yourself in a system where you don't necessarily have all the access. And so that's a good thing. But I would suggest that most of these DEI programs that have been put out there are very much what Malcolm X would have critiqued, which is it's just there for show and for FaceTime. and doesn't really help people. In fact, has the opposite experience. If you see some of the comments on the trade articles about this development, there's been a lot of discussion about how diversity slots on television, lead actually to blocking people. So, and I've experienced this directly. I've worked on network television shows where what happens is that the network will have a slot for the diversity writer who comes in as a staff writer, the lowest level writer, and the studio will pay for that. So it doesn't come out of the show's budget. So no money of yours that could have gone into production goes into hiring this other writer. The studio is paying for that, and so they're brought on like, here, let's give an opportunity to a minority person. And I've seen this now in several shows where that person is brought in. They're not really treated with respect because the assumption is that they got in, because they weren't good enough, and they're giving them a handout. And even if they were talented, their talent wasn't really noticed. And at the end of the season, I consistently saw that person, because the studio will only finance one season of that person's salary, and then you either have to promote them to be an actual member of your writing staff that you're paying for as a show, or you have to let them go. And in every situation that I've been in, that person was always let go because just nobody wanted to promote them. They didn't take them seriously anyway, even if they did deserve to be taken seriously. They weren't taken seriously because they had the diversity, drama over them. And then the studio would bring in another new minority writer for the staff writer gig the next year, and that person would be fired at the end of the year. And it was just a revolving door. And I don't believe any single one of those young writers that I worked with on those diversity slots ever had a career. They never had a job after that. So the studio and the network, everyone got to feel very liberal and progressive and look at the opportunities we're giving when they're not giving people opportunities because people aren't advancing. And so that's a concern with a lot of these DEI initiatives is they don't actually advance minorities. They actually lock them into a degraded place, where they're looked down upon. And so the fact that this Warner Brothers TV workshop is now being reconstituted under the DEI initiative, it's not good news, in my opinion. If people are concerned within Warner Brothers, rightly, if it has indeed turned into something that we would call the sort of the woke propaganda, which wasn't what I experienced in 2011, but if that's what it became in 2016 onwards, then let's address that. Let's address, going back to what it had almost 40 years worth of direct experience, which is hard work and bring your A game. And rise to the occasion and force minorities to do so that they can survive in a marketplace that can be hostile. We have several decades of experience on how to do that in the Warner Brothers television program. So it doesn't make sense to me that the solution is you just put it under DEI where it's going to be treated with even more disrespect. You can imagine DEI will, they'll be ignored. And if you're concerned about political ideology, that's going to continue under that kind of structure. And so I think everyone's going to lose from this. I don't think this is going to help anyone. Ultimately, the challenge with corporate America is always no one is looking long term. I mean, you had in the old days of Hollywood, you'd have the studio heads, right? You'd have Louis Mayer, the Warner Brothers, those guys, Jack Warner, those people. You'd have them actually planning out decades in advance where they wanted to take their company, right? And these were ruthless people. They were titans, and they could be cruel, and I'm sure did a lot of immoral things, perhaps illegal things. But they also had a long-term plan for their company. That's why these studios still exist today. That's why Warner exists, because Jack Warner and his family and his cohorts had a plan for it that has allowed it to continue well into another century. What we're having right now is even smart business executives like David Zaslav are looking at the short-term bottom line for their own, for their own companies. He's got very successful company Discovery. He's melding Warner Brothers into it. He knows how Discovery works, and I'm a big fan of Discovery. But Warner Brothers is a very different animal, and so he's turning Warner Brothers more into Discovery. And I think that's a short-term thing to save the studio from some of the problems it brought upon itself in the last 5 years. But long-term, it's the destruction of the studio. And I hope that there will be people within Mr. Zaslav's team that will say, look, eventually Discovery may sell Warner to Universal or whomever, right? Will there be anything worth selling? We've seen that happen with MGM. MGM was one of the great classic studios that has been sold many times and has faltered a lot. It's got Bond. Even now, Bond is beginning to falter, right? And so it's a tragedy when companies that have created great work throughout history, throughout a century, start going down this path, which leads to erosion. Fox no longer exists, right? It's become part of Disney, and we've lost that. And so this, for me, what's happening with the Warner Brothers Television Workshop is part of a greater tragedy of what happens, at the sort of end of an era. We're reaching the end of the era of the old studios. Hopefully something better is coming, but in the process of that, I think there's going to be a lot of setbacks for people. I mean, look, the world is a hard place. Minorities in any culture still have to struggle, and they will continue to struggle even if they've given opportunities like the workshop offered them. But I don't think anyone benefits from closing down those opportunities. And if those opportunities have gone down a path that's perhaps not what we want, such as become political indoctrination, then fix that problem. And that's, I don't think it helps anyone economically to close doors like that. And so I'm hoping that with time, there will be a return to the Warner Brothers Television Workshop to what it was. And if not, I'm hoping that others will be wise enough to realize that this industry needs talented people. It needs to find new voices that are actually valuable voices. You don't need new voices for the sake of new voices. That's often the critique of people saying, oh, well, what do you need diversity for? You need voices that serve the constantly growing marketplace, which is global now, and a lot of those cultures are actually pretty socially conservative. So that's one of the things Hollywood has difficulty with, is that it's often in this quest for diversity is seeking out voices that don't really relate to the marketplace on a global scale. So I think that this is going to have to be part of the maturation process of where we are as we expand past the bizarre world that social media created and the political propaganda that began in 2016, and actually get to a place where we're all trying to make something successful so we can all make good entertainment that lasts. You watch Casablanca today, it still works, right? You watch the classic films, they still work. And people, Hollywood is founded by people that didn't have opportunities. It was founded largely by people from the East Coast that were being blocked out of Broadway. There's, the old story, you can read it, in Empire of Their Own, which is a great history of Hollywood, of how a lot of Jewish merchants that were being blocked out of the high society of New York and Broadway and all these things went and created Hollywood. These were people that didn't have opportunities, and they created their own opportunities, right? And, they found a way, and we have to keep creating a system where others can find a way to advance us. So those are my thoughts on the Warner Brothers Television Workshop. I hope you'll leave some comments here and share your thoughts. I'm sad about where it is. I'm hoping something better will come out of it, but that's Hollywood.